What's going on, everybody? We are here at the Strongboxx gym in Clark, New Jersey, about to hit a nice little strongman workout. So we're gonna hit some heavy box squats, then go into 3 different strongman events. So we're gonna do some frame carries, some keg tossing, and some Atlas stones, kind of iconic events that we see. I am getting ready for the Rogue Invitational coming up here Halloween weekend in Austin, Texas. It is the biggest strongman contest there's ever been. So right now, 10 athletes got invited in the world. I was fortunate enough to be one of them. And it is a massively stacked lineup, huge money on the line. So a lot of work going into this prep to make sure I am 100% ready to go. Coming off of an interesting year injury-wise, about 9 or 10 months ago, I ruptured my tricep on my left arm. Rehab was going great for that. Was planning on going to World's Strongest Man this past year, and about 3 weeks before World's Strongest Man, found out I had testicular cancer. So that kind of got cut from that and had to take care of that. But fortunately, I'm now in remission, focusing on my health, getting back stronger than ever, and now I am in prep for the biggest competition Strongman has ever seen. So excited to get going, excited to be here down in Jersey at the Strongboxx gym, and let's get to work. Today, worked on some decently heavy box squats on the safety squat bar. So worked up to 640, 650-ish for a couple of sets of 2. Didn't feel too bad, moved pretty well. So I think in my, from my perspective, I said before, I am not only the shortest, but usually one of the lightest athletes that competes. I'm 5'10", typically around 285 pounds. So while I'm big, I'm not that big in this sport. And I think for me, having that kind of like underdog or dark horse mentality every time I step into a competition is exciting for me, because I like to prove people wrong. It's kind of been the theme of my career all the way up until this point. When I first started strongman, I wasn't good at the sport. I took dead last in the first 8 competitions I did, and made these goals that I knew I could attain. That was kind of this stepping stone on this career path that I've gotten to now. And along the journey, I just kind of came up with this motto that's train to become the person they said you would never be. And that motto has kind of been my entire life's motto ever since coming up with that, because throughout my entire career, I've always been told oh, you're not going to be big enough, you're not going to be able to get strong enough, to get to this level. And here I am a few years later, competing at the biggest competitions of the world, at World's Strongest Man, the Arnold Strongman Classic. I'm a North American champion, an Arnold International champion, previous American record holder, and being able to have all these accolades and everything is just a testament to the hard work and proving people wrong throughout the entire time that I've been doing this sport. And that's what is still exciting to me every time I step onto the competition field, because people look at me and they automatically assume I'm only going to be able to perform to a certain level. But I tend to prove them wrong, which is a lot of fun. So I kind of always walk into every show with a chip on my shoulder, ready to put out a big performance and show everybody that just because I'm not a behemoth of a person, I can still throw down with the best of them. After that, went into some frame carry and some speed events. So only worked up to 700 pounds on the frame, which isn't terribly heavy, but getting the grip back into the swing of things, feeling comfortable again, moving with weight in my hands, which has really kind of been where our focus is at, because I haven't been able to do that in such a long time. So I think for me, adversity's kind of always been a constant theme of my career, and this year has been absolutely no different. I mean, we look at just the climate of the world right now and the pandemic that we're going through. So everybody in your everyday life is facing some kind of adversity. And then in my personal life, obviously dealing with a traumatic tricep injury while attempting a log press world record back in October. I've never had a major injury that has needed surgery up until that point. So that certainly put me down and out, and I really didn't know what my career was going to look like, because a tricep is really difficult to come back from. I think in strongman, we always see bicep tendons tear. We see some more common injuries, and athletes come back relatively quickly from those. But seeing a ruptured tricep isn't that common. So there wasn't much relatability for me to look at after when going through this rehab. But fortunately, everything was going pretty well. Even to this day, I still have some range of motion deficits. The strength is slowly coming back, but I've just accepted the fact that it's going to be a longer process than I would have hoped. Fortunately, in my position, I have a master's degree in athletic rehab and athletic training, so I kind of know healing processes and how to rehab injuries. And I've always tried to re-ground myself when I start to get ahead of myself and thinking, oh, I'm not as strong as I need to be or where I should be at this point in my rehab. But at the end of the day, I look back and have to think about what they actually did with my tricep to put it all back together in order to make it a functioning muscle again. Typically when we see muscles tear or tendons tear, we see it kind of rip like a piece of paper, right? And then with the surgeon, they'll go back, stitch it together, pin it back down, and you're good to go. With mine, the surgeon actually looked at me and said, when he opened up my arm, he had to take a step back and rethink everything he was going to do because it looked like a firecracker had gone off in my tricep. So the tendon was kind of frayed everywhere, and essentially what they had to do was they had to bring all the pieces of the tendon back together, use 12 sutures to make one common tendon, and then they used 4 anchors into my olecranon, into my elbow, to pin it all back down. While doing the rehab for my tricep, then I get the diagnosis of testicular cancer, so kick me when I'm down. And I will say, the only reason I found out that I had this cancer was because of this sport. I was in the middle of my training for World's Strongest Man. It was the day after a heavy squat and deadlift session. And I was using a squat suit and a deadlift suit the day prior. And as any lifter out there knows, there is a lot of squeezing that happens when we're in those suits. So the following day when I had some groin pain, I kind of figured it was attributed to that. And that evening, for some reason, just decided to do a check on myself and noticed that something wasn't quite right. I had felt a hardening in one area of my testicle and brought it up to my husband, told him about it, and he was like, you know, I think we should probably go get this looked at, because when we're looking at the grand scheme of things, 29 years old, kind of right in that sweet spot for where testicular cancer hits. And even though I don't have a family history of it, it was definitely still a concern. So as I was getting ready for World's Strongest Man, I actually had my physical for the competition just a few weeks later after noticing, and they immediately caught on. From that point, you know, in that short couple of weeks, the mass had actually grown a little bit in size. So I was starting to come to terms with what was going on and had the hunch that I was probably going to be dealing with a cancer of some type. And from there, went on to get an ultrasound, and from the ultrasound had my appointment where things moved along really quickly. The appointment was on a Thursday morning. The doctor walked into the appointment and said, you know, we have this going on, you're having surgery on Tuesday. And there was really no time to think about it. There was no, you know, other options that we could look at. That was the only thing that was on the table. And my husband and I just kind of looked at each other and we just said, okay, like, this is what we're dealing with now. And the scariest part of that was, it wasn't the surgery necessarily, it was the waiting afterwards. Because with testicular cancer, they don't do a biopsy prior to the surgery. They just go in there and remove the testicle and the lymph nodes and everything attached to it. Then they send it off to pathology, then you'll get results in about 7 to 10 days afterwards. So that waiting was the hardest part. And it was the not knowing if it's just a benign mass, is it some kind of cancer, what are we really dealing with? And end up getting the call from the doctor saying that, you know, confirmed stage 1 testicular cancer. Fortunately, we were caught it early. So my entire outlook on all this is I just kind of roll with the punches and just accept things for what they are. I don't look at them as defeats. I looked at them as obstacles to overcome, and that's never been something that has stopped me in my journey to becoming one of the world's strongest men. So I will say there is absolutely one supplement that I keep as a staple in my training at all times, especially after my injuries, and it's Flex. This has been, you know, as I mentioned before, I've gone through one roller coaster of a ride over the past year, really 10 months, between the tricep injury, then cancer, and this has been the one tried and true thing the entire time that I've been taking just to keep my joints healthy, my muscles ready to go, and that every time I step into the gym, I can feel confident that I have the proper nutrients and vitamins in me to get me through the training session. So this has been my staple. It says rock solid right on the packaging, so you know it's from Animal, it's going to work. Solid supplement, whether you're active, whether you're a weightlifter, CrossFitter, what any sport you do, or if you just need to feel better, this is the product for you. Just wanted to give a huge shout out to the Strongboxx gym here in Clark, New Jersey. Johnny Wazico, the owner, is a pro strongman as well. He's been a super close friend of mine for many years, and absolutely honored to have us here at the gym to do kind of a takeover of the space for the day, to allow me to train, to allow Animal to follow along and have a great time doing it. So if you're in the area, make sure you check it out and get strong. It's always fun making a mess. Just for good measure.
BP Muscle ตัวแทนนำเข้าและจัดจำหน่ายผลิตภัณฑ์อาหารเสริมแบรนด์ Animal และ Universal รวมไปถึงอุปกรณ์ฟิตเนสแบรนด์ Grizzly อย่างเป็นทางการแต่เพียงผู้เดียว